figures show that fewer women sit as CEOs of Fortune 100 companies than men called John, and 93% of those CEOs have the Y chromosome. But just as men dominate at the top, they also dominate at the bottom. 87% of people sleeping rough on the streets are men. So what is it that makes men the gender of extremes? And how do we explain that 87%? Charities and organisations have done various bits of research into the causes of homelessness generally, and some key themes do emerge. Loss of employment and relationship breakdown are the most common causes of homelessness, and in addition, nearly half of the people sleeping on the streets suffer from mental health issues. But no one has ever asked the question of why these issues or events in a person's life affect men so much more than they affect women, or at least to the point that it drives them onto the streets.
2 years ago I lost the job and because the shop is closing down, and no money for the rent. I lost the flat and I've been in the street.
I got hurt, you know, from the relationship, right? You know what I mean? I don't want to go into that. Any chance a bit of help here, guys? Anything wrong at all? See? Most of the time people don't even notice you're here. You know, you're sort of invisible. You know what I mean? But what can you do? Smile?
What led to me being on the street was laziness, if I'll be honest with you. And I was in a revolving door of prison and homelessness. I went looking for my mother, and it was the biggest rejection I've ever felt. It was that day when I went to stay with her. And before I knew it, I was playing truant from school. You know, I just started rebelling from a real young age. I won't go into too much detail, but I had to blag my way into council property. You know, I told a few white lies, well, a few whoppers. But, you know, it was either that or get pregnant. And I wasn't going to get pregnant.
Wanting to talk to more people about their experiences, we found a soup kitchen in North London where we met Craig and Mario.
I've been living on the streets now for the last 7 months. Last 12 years, I was actually in a stable relationship, married and children, and we split up. I done the honest thing and left her to her own devices. She had everything, I had nothing. I'm quite a proud person and I won't ever approach my family, but the first time I found myself on the streets was the worst experience of my life. You don't know which way to turn. Whilst living on the street, got dragged onto the wrong side through, I think you can tell, by alcoholism. My youngest is 8 months.
I'm here because I've got addiction problem.
Okay.
And I'm finding it hard to make ends meet, so I'm just coming in till I can sort myself out. Because when you're mixed up with this and mixed up with the people I'm getting mixed up with, you just can't turn your back like that and walk away. You have to, you know, there's a chance that I'll end up in prison, or there's a chance I'll end up dead even, you know. It's just, I've been getting a methadone prescription for years now, but my problem mainly was with cocaine. It was a smokable cocaine, you know. So my family got me into it, yeah.
After hearing about men's relationship breakdown stories, we sought out a lawyer to find out what the legal outlook is for single men. Barrister Matt Hutchings specialises in property law and in particular homelessness.
The first obvious point to make is that when you have a relationship breakdown, which is one of the major causes of homelessness, then any family court that's asked to decide who keeps the accommodation is going to give very serious weight to the welfare of the children. And it's not a specifically legal bias that the woman is more likely to have the children stay with her than the man. It's more of a cultural bias, but that has a knock-on effect in terms of the legal outcome of who keeps the accommodation. So in terms of homelessness, in order to be owed any of the major duties by a local authority for assistance as a homeless person, you have to show you have a priority need.
Homelessness isn't just a problem for inner cities, as we found in Leafy Lewis. Pearl Zia runs a food bank in Lewis that provides food for more than 40 people in the area every week. She knows better than most just how easy it can be to fall on hard times.
The reason I started off the food bank to start off with was 4.5 years ago. I was actually homeless, just change of circumstances. I used to, where I lived, break up of marriage, and I was in temporary accommodation for a year. When I first got down here, I had no money, didn't know anybody at all. And I was sent to a food bank. I'd never even heard of a food bank. It was at one of the churches. Went along there and actually helped me for a long time. I had a lot of support from the people there. I wasn't in a good place, I was in a very dark place at the time. And when I kind of got myself back together, I said, well, when I can, I'm going to try and help other people. Right. What we find with men when they come to the food bank is that they won't actually go and ask for help, because if they have gone somewhere and they've been turned away, they've kind of given up. You know, because I've got a gentleman that was out in the woods for 5 years and wouldn't even go and sign on for money, so he had no money in that 5-year period. And he came along to me, somebody found him out in the woods and said, would you mind seeing this guy and giving him some food? And he came along to me and I helped him out with food and kind of got him back socialising with people again.
We actually met Tim, who gave us an incredible insight into what his life was like for those 5 years.
It started out as a tent, but over the 5 years, of course, they deteriorate. So in the end, it ended up as a tent with holes in, but covered over with a bit of plastic tarpaulin, which I found to keep the rain out. It's all cooking, if you had any food at all. Used to use wood, which I found in the woods where I was staying, which when it was dry, was fine. I mean, you struggled to light it, obviously, but I finally found a way of doing it, which was fine until it either rained or snowed, when all your wood got wet, and of course you cannot light wet wood, so you go without heating. Just before Christmas, about 3 years ago, I was up on the hill and it snowed. Now down here in Lewis, there was about 2 inches of snow, but of course up on the hill, it's a lot deeper, and also it got wind blown, and in places it was 3-4 foot deep. And so I was stuck in a tent with about 3 foot of snow all around me, with no food, no heating, just melted snow to actually drink, which I melted by holding against my body in a cup. You've got no lights at all, because you've got no electricity, so basically you are living, well, you're barely existing, let's put it that way.
It really struck me that someone could be homeless for so long, and I wondered how difficult it is to help those people for whom sleeping on the streets has become a way of life.
There's an identifiable group called the 205 in London, who we've learnt a lot from. That name comes from 205 longer term rough sleepers who were identified in 2009, so quite a long time ago. And these are people who have who essentially are institutionalised on the streets. We've tried a lot of conventional ways of trying to get them off. We've made them offers of accommodation, we've engaged with them, but it's not worked so far. Sometimes people have fears of authority, they're worried about making benefit claims, that sort of thing that you have to do to get into some emergency provision. Sometimes they just feel that nothing that's available matches what they want. And being on the streets for a long time it does impact on somebody and must to some degree interfere with their ability to be able to make the most sensible decisions.
When we returned to central London, we were invited to meet Ule, who had been sleeping rough in Waterloo. Can you describe to me what's kind of led to you living on the streets?
Well, I came from Sweden and I just want to travel around a little bit. Been on drugs, been drinking a lot, almost through my whole life, and I've been married as well, and working at the same time. So it's been a little bit hard to find a balance.
What do you find difficult about living on the streets, and what do you actually perhaps like about it?
If I'm going to tell you the truth, I don't have any hard times living on the streets. You make good friends and good connections. Don't expect too much. Just be patient and hang on. Keep calm and carry on.
We also found Jane and Kenny there, both in their 60s. So you guys are a couple and you live together on the streets. Can you describe what it's like? Is it different for men and women, do you think?
Yes, I think it is. Especially as a female, he can't be watching me 24/7. Like I say, I was attacked under the tunnels in Waterloo. I was dragged out of my
bed.
Sleeping bag.
Someone tried to steal her bag, but she had her arm under the strap so that if anybody pulled it, she would feel it in her sleep.
87% of people sleeping on the streets do tend to be men. Do you have any ideas as to why that is?
Maybe they're running away from relationships or bad, bad kin, I don't know.
Did your relationship break down? So you say you had children. Did she have the house? Did she take the house?
Yeah, I gave her the house. I gave her the keys. That's my children, You look after them. I'm gone, and I left. There you go. There's the keys. Mortgage was fully paid. £14,300 I paid for the flat, and I paid £700 indemnity fee, and the house was mine, bought and paid for. And here I am with my, recently, my baby, homeless.
Can't be watching me 24/7. Like I say, I was attacked under the tunnels in Waterloo. I was dragged out of my sleeping bag.
So Jane's the only woman that we've met on the street so far. Even she had her boyfriend Kenny as a male companion. And I think we've been asking this question the whole time of why there's so many men on the streets, but equally important, we need to understand why there aren't as many women. We spoke to Esther Sample, who is Women's Strategy Manager at St Mungo's. So why is it you think women don't show up in the statistics of rough sleepers?
I think that's partly down to the way those figures are collated. So they are based on people counted bedded down on the street. We know from our outreach teams that a lot of women actually will be more hidden. So we hear about women that are in 24-hour fast food stores. They might be in A&E. There's a lot of fear for women around rough sleeping. Partly there's dangers of being approached by people and experiencing violence on the street. So women talk about having been on the street for only a few days and people approach them for sex.
We still felt we needed to speak to more men on the streets. So we came to Croydon to join an outreach charity on a night run.
Most of our people, the indigenous homeless, that is people who've never had another country other than Britain, most of those people have an institutional background, that is in children's homes, prisons, reformatories, mental institutions, the armed services, that sort of place where their expectation of food is that it's something that someone else prepares and delivers to them through a hatch. It's the older children from the first marriage which has broken up, who then, when they're becoming difficult teenagers, they get excluded by mum's new partner. And particularly young males who can be aggressive and who can be difficult are more likely to be excluded, and so they get shoved out of the nest pretty early and can't go back.
I was brought up in Hammersmith and Mum kicked me out when I was 7 years old. I was on the streets of Hammersmith from the age of 7 to the age of 14.
My real dad left me when I was 8 years old. And my mum got married. But I won't go with a long story what happened in the past. But he slammed me across the floor, he beat me, done all this.
I mean, it's the first time I've been in this situation. I'm 58 years old. So it's hard. And the annoying thing is, I've survived all this time. You know, everyone have their ups and downs. But I've survived, and now I've hit rock bottom.
And I've got a family in Ireland, step-brother sisters, but they don't want nothing to do with me.
I'm still looking for a job now. That's what I'm hoping to do. I'm hoping to go back into it. I normally come down here, if I'm totally desperate, I'll come down here. That's what I'll do.
Deep down I knew where it was going to end, but I couldn't do anything about it. That was a horrible thing about it. But I'm going to soldier on and get going again.
In this block over here, 12 young people, and we've got 19 adults in that.
I've been thinking about what Jad said in Croydon about relationship breakdown being felt a generation on and causing homelessness in young men. At YMCA in Burton, we met 3 guys who had come scarily close. Keegan, who's just 19, Josh, 23, and Perry, 21.
When I was 9 years old, my mum split up with my dad after 10 years of being married, and then we moved to South Wales with her new fella, and pretty much after about a year of being around him, started beating my mum up, chucking her on the floor, breaking her arm, and I had to watch all that. So I've learned to pretty much bottle everything up. And I kept moving back to South Wales, obviously, to live with my dad. And then I get kicked out again, moved back with my mum. So it strained the relationship between me and my mum there. And then it was last July, things really hit the fan. And I got chucked out and ended up having to come to YMCA. I used to be quite a confident person as it was before everything happened, and then when everything happened, it's like a bombshell hit. I struggled with my anxiety, depression, the lot, didn't want to look after myself, anything like that. I mean, when I first moved here, I couldn't venture out my flat, couldn't do it. To be honest, if I'd not learned about YMCA, I would have been in a lot worse off place than I am now. A lot worse off. I mean, well, obviously when I got kicked out, that really hit me big time. So I would have ended up on the streets or doing something stupid and maybe not even being here now, to be honest. It got that bad at one point.
My best mate died in a moped accident. It was actually a year on the 18th of May. This year, just gone. So I was upstairs, I just didn't want to go out, I was just crying and crying and crying for weeks. And I was going to work with my eyes out my head, like kind of no sleep whatsoever, just absolutely exhausted. And in an argument, my mum wished me dead. She said, "We'll go drop dead," like in the heat of the argument. This is the day after burying my mate.
I didn't know what else to think. I had really so many bad thoughts at that time. Everything was exploding. The whole world was just exploding. Nothing mattered anymore. I'd not spoken to my mum for so long. I didn't have any other friends. I was stuck in Derby with nowhere else to go. So I thought, I'll just take a walk. So eventually I came to this field and I sat in the middle of it and I just took one pill after another. And I didn't have anything at that time. My mind was blank. I felt like I didn't have a heart. My soul was gone. I felt crushed. I felt battered.
One report done by homeless charities says that 46% of people sleeping on the streets suffer from mental health issues. Given that the vast majority of those are men, it begs the question, do men deal with those issues differently to women? Is it harder for them to reach out, perhaps? We asked the general public what they thought. So, did you know that suicide is now the largest killer of young men in the UK?
I didn't know that.
Does it surprise you?
It does, and the reason for that is purely and simply that there doesn't seem to be a lot in the press and media on this subject.
I think it's very surprising,
Yeah. I think admitting weakness as a man is generally quite taboo.
Guys don't talk, I think. Females talk a bit more.
We do talk.
I don't think it's not majority of guys don't talk. They keep it for themselves.
We're quite bad at sharing things, actually. So,
if a man opens up, it's not seen as a man. That's not the case with me. I'm okay.
I think it would take long for a man to initially admit that there was something, but I think they'd probably be surprised how supportive and okay their friends were with it.
If you felt under pressure or felt like you had some sort of mental health issues, how would you feel about talking about those?
I would be very careful about talking about those sort of
Why
issues.
is that?
I think it's pride. If I'm totally frank, I think that it's seen as it can be seen in some circles as a weakness.
I think it was really amazing there that every guy we spoke to talked about not showing weakness, and I think there's still actually a social pressure on guys to live up to this kind of macho, manly ideal.
To find out more, we spoke to Jane, the CEO of Calm, which is a charity she set up to help prevent male suicide.
I think it's pride.
So what are your reactions to those videos that we just showed you?
Not at all surprised. To say, can you help me, in current society says, I'm not a man. Nobody says to a woman who's failing, well, you're not a proper woman, are you? But to actually have your gender questioned because some things have gone wrong, I think must be very, very hard. Since the 70s, the stereotypes around men have been almost fixed. And nothing has moved on. So a man is defined by his ability to hit something really hard into the ground, carry heavy objects, and shoulder everything. And that is really destructive. Men's behaviours very often lead them to a point where they become homeless. We don't value men, so they are less likely to receive mental health services. To be a guy and to deserve and be deserving of help, you have to have some other special characteristic which singles you out as being deserving. So you either have to be disabled, or you have to be a prisoner, or you have to be in the forces, or you have to be, there's got to be something about that group of men which says that that we could get some money for looking after them. And you're faced with a form which says, what deserving characteristic does this group of people have? Is it BME community? Is it a disabled group? Is it prisoners? And you think, no, the poor guys haven't killed anybody or stolen anything. They're just... And it's heartbreaking.
The Supreme Court case on the 13th of May did bring some hope for single men in need of housing. Matt Hutchings assisted charities Shelter and Crisis in the case.
I was involved in the Supreme Court case of Hotak, and the big issue in that case was about the meaning of vulnerability. In essence, the word vulnerable had been interpreted by the Court of Appeal so that local authorities could set a very high threshold for someone to be vulnerable. In other words, you might be depressed, suicidal, you might suffer abuse on the streets, but still not be vulnerable. So the Supreme Court looked at that question and overruled the previous leading cases in that area, so that the threshold for vulnerability has come down really to mean what an ordinary person would understand by the word vulnerable. That's very recently come out. We haven't yet seen what the impact will be. Local authorities are still digesting what it really means. And I would suggest that one thing that it obviously means is that more Single homeless people will have to be helped by local authorities.
Once on the street, being in a relationship doesn't seem to help your case either. Kerry has just found out she's pregnant and is being encouraged to leave her partner Ramon to increase her chances of being housed.
That first night, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know. I phoned anyone I could think of.
Then you found guys say, yeah, you want to come sleep in my house?
Yeah.
They just want to take you to sleep in my house because they want something back.
I've had people urinate on me. I've had cans of drinks thrown all over me. I've had people walk past me and kick me or kick the dog. And I really had a terrible, terrible life before Ramon. I'm 19 weeks pregnant now. I'm still pillar to post with Ramon. And this lady phoned up the council and tried to help my case. And the lady from the council started trying to get this woman to persuade me to leave Ramon, saying I'd get housed quicker, he's not a priority.
Go, we want to have a new start, a clean.
I just want to be with Ramon and have my baby. And all they want to do is separate us.
It's not going to happen. Like, you are my girl, you are my partner. We have 6 years together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my baby. We're going to go through together.
Yeah.
Don't matter how long it's going to take. Don't matter.
Yeah.
We're going to get a solicitor and we will get this thing sorted out.
Yeah, I know.
End of story.
And that's that.
What we've found is that the 87% has many faces. For one thing, the numbers may be hiding those women who are invisibly sleeping rough. In addition, men suffer from legal and cultural bias, which means on breakdown of a relationship, women tend to stay in accommodation while men find themselves on the street. And there seems to be a lack of understanding for men with mental health issues, and support is found wanting. And then beyond all of those issues, social prejudice still puts pressure on men to behave in certain ways and puts up a barrier to them asking for help.
We find men are undervalued and underserved when they fall on hard times. We've seen that homelessness can impact anyone, but it impacts men in particular on an extraordinary scale. No one ever asked why before, but let's keep asking, and let's keep talking about those issues that affect men in that way. And maybe we can help that 87% back on their feet, which would go a long way to bringing the whole 100% back in from the cold.